This person is called Brigitte Empire. This is called The Ava Kris Tyson Allegations, How Transphobia Obstructs Justice. So yeah, it's another one trying to lay the smack down on, commentary communities talking about this and people misgendering Kris Tyson as if that's what matters right now, as opposed to Kris Tyson being a piece of shit, you know? For me, if you call Kris Tyson a he, I don't give a shit. I don't claim Kris Tyson. Kris Tyson, if they're trans in a different fucking way than I am, so I don't give a shit. Anyway, Brigitte Empire, let's see how angry this makes me.
Okay, so let's talk about influences. Unfortunately, influences from minority groups are held up by people outside of those groups as speaking for said minority groups. This is obviously bullshit. No one was accusing...
Well, I mean, anyone that is an influencer is a representative of something. Why is that bullshit? Already, we come out with the crazy claims that these people make. It's insane. Like, yeah, when a trans person has a lot of followers, they are kind of representing trans people on a wider level because that's the only trans people some people are going to know. Like, this is pretty obvious.
As speaking for said minority groups. This is obviously bullshit. No one was accusing all white people or all gingers of being sex pests just because Louis C.K. got Me Too'd, but...
I'm sure this person has said plenty of things about all white people, don't worry.
People love to tokenize, and take aspects of that token as the final say on the group.
What she's already going to miss the point of is that it seems weird that there's so many trans influencers, bearing in mind what a small group we are, that come out to be not necessarily groomers, but terrible people. Whether it's Ava Kris Tyson doing grooming, whether it's Keffels ripping her fans off and all the other bizarre shit that she's done that she's still pretending didn't happen and is just streaming again, whether it's people like Brigitte Empire and Essence of Thought who are propagandizing to easily manipulated people, there's a heck of a lot of people to choose from, you know, Chris Chan, you know. How many more do we want? So I'm guessing she's not going to touch on that, but that's a point that I think is probably worth bearing in mind. And also when it's a smaller group, yeah, they probably do kind of speak for that group.
They represent. This isn't just an issue with influencer culture either, or even celebrity culture, its progenitor. If someone has a preconceived view of a certain group, they will rush to find a person that embodies these preconceived notions, and then use the fact of their existence to paint entire communities with the negative stereotypes they've already decided are inherent to that group. This is the most obvious with the...
I mean, maybe, but like, you can't stop that, right? And like, the best thing in that case that our influencers should do is understand the position that they're in. Understand that if they're being a fucking child groomer, it's probably going to have wider implications for the community. What I'm saying is this whole thing is fucking Kris Tyson's fault. We're gonna paint it that it's people calling Kris Tyson things that's the problem, but it really isn't. Like, people are more likely to be transphobic if famous trans people they've heard of all turn out to be terrible people. That's just how it is.
The way people from September the 11th until now will conflate all Muslims with those who flew the planes that day, despite the vast majority of Muslims being completely against those actions. Something you could find out from a single conversation or a single Google search if you were actually interested, which obviously these people aren't. Their hatred comes first.
The stick up the arse is like the chip on the shoulder. Sorry, we're being nice. The chip on the shoulder here is very apparent straight away.
Justifications come after the fact, and only exist to confirm their pre-existing suspicions, and to keep as ammunition to throw out whenever someone questions them on their obviously discriminatory ideas and attitudes, to trick the other person and themselves into thinking that they reason themselves into their bigotry, which obviously they didn't. And one of the biggest indicators of this is that populations that go on to higher education tend to be less bigoted. And in places that are multicultural, like most cities in Britain, for example, overtly prejudicial attitudes are less common than they are in rural areas, where most people are white, straight, and conservative. That doesn't...
I think with universities, like higher education, it's becoming a lot more complicated than that now because of, like, it seems that certain ideologies have kind of taken over those spaces a little bit. I don't know too much about that. It's more stuff that I'm seeing from other people, but it's something I need to look into more. But it's a nice bit of gaslighting to pretend that that's just kind of is just that basic, I guess. Like, we're trying to inflate a certain side here. Like, don't think I don't notice how much of a propagandist fuck these people are. Like, it's so obvious.
Doesn't mean that bigotry doesn't exist in these communities, but it's often different, more insidious. Since the internet became a mainstay of culture across the world, we've moved into a global culture, at least in certain regards. And one aspect of this global culture is that anyone can find representatives of any group and follow them, observing their behaviour, forming their own opinions about them and learning in a very limited sense. And I say limited because what people see when they follow a queer or trans, for example, influencer is the version of themselves they present online, which is, at best, only a small aspect of the person behind the account, and usually a performance. And even then, even the most authentic influencers are inauthentic by the very nature of not streaming their entire life to their audiences 24/7. In this way, the proliferation of influencers of all backgrounds across the entire world has both good and bad aspects. Marginalized groups now have a voice that they never had before, even in countries where they are completely underground as a community. They can interact online with people who don't have to hide. The other side of this coin is, for people who come into this space with certain prejudices, when someone who they are already suspicious of because they belong to a particular group is outed as a bad person, it is very easy for them to imagine that the wrongs a marginalized influencer has done apply to their entire community.
Which, of course, is the influencer's fault, right? If our influencers weren't doing this kind of shit, then it wouldn't be a problem. But we want to stick up for them whenever they do things. I'm hoping there's some kind of acknowledgement of this in here.
Especially if the only person you've ever heard of from that group is the one who's been outed. For trans people, we've had Caitlyn Jenner's behaviour thrown at us time and time again.
Caitlyn Jenner, I mean, I think she killed someone in like a car crash or some shit, so that's pretty terrible. But yeah, I'm guessing we got Caitlyn Jenner, maybe Blair White, maybe Buck Angel, who I'm also talking about in a bit. Let's see. I mean, hey, I can give plenty of other names that this person won't give, like Keffels or fucking Jesus Christ. Sorry, I already gave a bunch, you know. Trans terrible people. I shouldn't blank every time I fucking come up with this shit, but hey, it is what it is. Hey, we'll think of some examples while we're watching.
And despite the community never claiming her, and compared to the behaviour of this latest influencer...
So I'm not claiming Chris Tyson, so I'm not claiming Keffels, you know.
That was small potatoes. We have to make it clear to everyone that one person's actions do not represent all of us. That should be obvious, and to most people it is. But there is a group of very driven, highly organised people who are ready to argue the opposite, because they want us back in the closet, or worse. We need to make sure that we make it clear that we condemn this individual's actions, while also making it clear that using them to attack trans people in general, using this as an excuse for misgendering, accusations that we are all groomers or perverts, or dismissing the testimony of victims in order to
Just an egg search. Someone on Twitter claimed to have proof Buck Angel was a serial killer, but then refused to provide it. That sounds about right. I hope you're doing well.
For the narrative, these should all be off limits.
Oh, Finster, she was up to some interesting shit about HRT as well, wasn't it? See, this is the problem. It's when, like, so many of them have these kind of issues. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all very well being like, oh, we should denounce them while making sure that being transphobic to them is mean. Like, first off, I don't give a shit if someone's transphobic to a predator. I'll be transphobic to the predator because fuck them. Second of all, you're just skimming the surface even by talking about fucking Chris Tyson. I mean, you'd have to talk about yourself, Brigitte Empire. I'm talking about you specifically. If you wanted to go through all the people, because this person lies to their audience constantly, like so many other trans people.
We are people. Some of us are assholes. If anything, that should make it clear how disappointingly normal trans people are. Some of us are great, and some of us should be in jail. Mr. Beast is the biggest YouTuber in the world. As such, anyone in his orbit is going to have a platform bigger than most people, let alone most trans people, could ever dream of.
What are we spending on Mr. Beast?
Because despite the fact that the people who started these rumours that led to the latest public backlash were trying to smear her because she's trans, to the point where the person they were holding up as a victim came out and said that she'd done nothing wrong, and
oh, this is the problem. I skipped slightly and she's making insane claims again. Okay, hang on.
never did look back. Or they have family that's not accepting and keeps them hidden. And that's what makes the allegations against Chris Tyson so disappointing, and in some aspects so hard to talk about. Because despite the fact that the people who started these rumours that led to the latest public backlash were trying to smear her because she's trans, to the point where the person they were holding up as a victim came out and said that she'd done nothing wrong.
What does that... Okay, who was starting rumours about Chris Tyson because she was trans? Like, there was stuff going around about her, like, about the shadman shit for, like, ages. And by the way, the victim saying that it wasn't abuse, which they seem to have, like, at least somewhat wavered on, bearing in mind there's been additional evidence brought out. Like, you don't necessarily take the victim's word for it because the victim was like 13 or 14 at the time. They might not even see it as abuse. I've been in abusive relationships. Like, at the time, you don't always see it as abuse. You think that that's kind of a normal part of a relationship, or you think that somehow you deserved something. There are lots of reasons why you don't just listen to the victim and take what they're saying as gospel. But I'm guessing this person is probably going to. Like, I read the description. There's a lot of stand with the victims, all that kind of shit. Lots of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Virtue signaling. There's a lot of virtue signaling in here. Something about Kyle Rittenhouse in here. That's interesting. Anyway.
I never did anything bad to her. In the days since, some pretty bad shit has come out even beyond that. And we should be able to talk about that and condemn it without falling for far-right narratives. And by
far-right narrative? What far-right narrative? I hate how you can just spit out these things and your stupid audience will listen to you. This is why, like, this person isn't that much less fucking horrific than Kris Tyson. And there's loads of trans people out there like this. Like, who's taking them to task? I guess I am. I've got what? Not much of a platform, so that's great. This person is like completely missing the point. Like, it's very easy to point to this one person that's done like very, very objectively, what is it? Yeah, objectively terrible things. And using them as a way to push a narrative when you're like just as bad in some ways because you're a fucking liar.
Victims instead of talking over them. So let's talk about Ava Kris Tyson and why we should believe victims. Not use them to...
Why we should believe victims. This person doesn't understand dynamics of abuse. The person doesn't understand what's been going on. This is fucking embarrassing. This is worse. This is how we provide cover for people like Kris Tyson whilst pretending we're not, whilst pretending we're condemning them. Like, we've heard a fair amount about transphobes and far-right narratives. How much have we heard about how bad pedophilia is? Or like grooming children on the internet to the point where they don't even think anything happened was wrong.
Craft misleading narratives, especially when there are real stories of abuse and bad behavior here.
Projection is like, the projection is on point. Fuck me. God, it's like listening to Donald Trump or something.
Adding false narratives and trying to fit the story of a potential abuser into the fascist crusade that is the groomer panic takes away from the real victims of this story and the real behavior we should be speaking out against. So, first off, I gotta say that I'm very disappointed how quick some people have been to buy into far-right smear campaigns, especially against trans women. The moment someone comes out as transgender, especially if they're in the public eye, they get a world of shit held at them by people who hate us, desperate to paint all trans people as creeps, predators, or even worse. Now,
I have to say I've been on the internet out as trans for not... Well, it depends if we're talking about this this channel and my Twitter and that, or more broadly. I haven't got that much shit, and if I do, I don't give that much of a shit because it's just benign idiots being benign, you know? But I'm not trying to paint myself and my community as victims, so I guess that's the difference.
This doesn't mean we shouldn't believe victims, quite the opposite. But if you see someone who, for example, explicitly ignores the testimony of the victim of their story, explicitly testifying that nothing bad happened and that they weren't victimized, just so they can maintain their narrative.
Oh, this person doesn't understand anything, do they? This person has no idea why you don't necessarily listen to this kind of victim specifically, that being Lava, which is no disrespect to them. But there's a reason why we don't just take their word as gospel on this kind of thing, where they were like 14 and Kris was like 20, where they might not have seen the relationship for what it was. Like, this is like terrifying. We're not very long in and I'm like, I want to tap out already, like, fuck me.
Maybe someone who intentionally misgenders someone in their attacks, making it clear they don't respect trans people in general. Someone who, in their accusations, theorizes that someone transitioned because their wife fell out with them over creepy behavior, which is something I saw in one of these videos and is just, what? How can anyone listen to someone say that and then take them seriously? Or,
I don't know, you're so vague about everything, I don't even know what she's talking about. Like, you can't follow up on any of this conveniently. And at the same time, people who follow this kind of person, who enjoy the victim narrative, are going to believe every word she says. Like, Jesus Christ. I don't know.
Or if, say, the person making the accusations has pictures with actual murderer Kyle Rittenhouse and wants us to seriously believe that they care.
Actual murderer Kyle Rittenhouse. See, this person just lies. Like, Kyle Rittenhouse was self-defense. Okay, this person doesn't know what they're talking about.
Because their wife fell out with them over creepy behavior, which is something I saw in one of these videos and is just, what? How can anyone listen to someone say that and then take them seriously? Or if, say, the person making the accusations has pictures with actual murderer Kyle Rittenhouse and wants us to seriously believe that they care about victims? In general, when an accusation is made, we should be...
Like, I hope the bias is, like, incredibly obvious. Like, far-right narratives, the murderer Kyle Rittenhouse, whilst supposedly talking about allegations against a child groomer, Kris Tyson, conveniently with throwing far bigger accusations at other people that were legally found not to have done the things that she said they did, such as Kyle Rittenhouse, who had a gunshot behind him, turned around to see a guy sprinting after him, throwing things, and like he fell to the ground or some shit. Like, it was self-defense, I'm sorry. You're just factually wrong about this and you're lying to your audience. Like, Brigitte Empire is almost as bad as Kris Tyson. And this is the problem, as I said. There's so many of these people, just because not all of them are groomers. Plenty of them are just liars, like this person, or Essence of Thought, for example, who was an objectively terrible person that this person would never call out because they say the same shit that she does.
Centering the victims of said accusation. And in the case of the initial allegations made against Tyson, trans public figure and best friend of the biggest YouTuber on the planet, and every YouTube thumbnail designer sleep paralysis demon, Mr. Beast, the victim was not centered at all. What was instead centered is a drive for clout chasing from drama channels.
Well, yeah, when there was, like, initial stuff about Kris Tyson, like, a lot of it was about Shadman. Like, what victims are they talking about? Like, why do we always have to, like, make sure a victim is, like, centered? Why do we always have to make sure a victim is centered? Especially when in a case like this, what the victim thinks isn't necessarily the most important thing, because the whole point is that they were being, like, manipulated. It's honestly, like, this person is getting on for, like, 10k subscribers. It's terrifying that they can just do this. Like, YouTube is the best place you can go if you just want to fucking lie to a bunch of people and get clout for it. Probably money for it, let's be honest. I mean, this person has Patreon, this person has all sorts of stuff.
Who clearly were waiting for any excuse to dunk on a trans woman, especially because the most damning allegations they made were that she groomed a teenager, who has a platform and who has come out and explicitly said, "These videos are massive lies and twisting the truth."
Yeah, they're not going to understand. This person, A, has changed their story several times as new info has come out, and they've looked at it and said, shit, this was worse than I remember. And B, they were manipulated by an older person. There's a reason why there's more to consider than just the victim. So when you're talking about centering victims, you're literally trying to fuck this whole thing up. Like, you're literally trying to do it as wrong as you can. Like, Jesus, are you that desperate to protect trans people? If you're that desperate to protect trans people, then look out for these fucking groomers in your midst. Or better yet, stop lying to people.
Ava never did anything wrong and just made a few edgy jokes. I was never exploited or taken advantage of. Can you do me a favour and comment on these videos and tell them to stop spreading lies? This situation takes away from children who are actively being exploited every day online. I'm not the victim of anything being played in these videos or at all. Kris did nothing wrong. What's actually disgusting is you guys twisting things and making me a victim. He also made it clear that all the incriminating messages were in public channels, not one-on-one, which does change the dynamic a little bit. He also clarified he never met with Ava one-on-one, and requested that everyone make this clear so as not to spread misinformation. So how do we deal with allegations of bad behaviour? We lift up the victims and we listen to them. In this case, this would mean disregarding these particular allegations, unless Lava GS, who made this statement, ever takes it back or something to that effect. Instead, the comments under this post are insisting that he has Stockholm Syndrome, which that's not what Stockholm Syndrome means, and even if it were, Stockholm Syndrome is a myth, but that's a story for another video. Otherwise, people are saying they don't believe it.
I think she's alleging towards the idea that they could be giving a false testimony or whatever because of having the wool pulled over their eyes. They're just discrediting what's true, which is great. Like, this is what we do, trans people. We all lie to each other. So we want to pretend that we can call out Kris Tyson by so far having said fuck all about, like, her actually being a groomer and looking through any of the shit that Kris Tyson did. Like, there seems to be more of it coming up, but, like, we're getting on for, like, 10 minutes so far. We've had more fucking accusations thrown out about Kyle Rittenhouse than Kris Tyson, and how Kyle Rittenhouse has anything to do with this, I have no idea. It just seems like an easy target.
Stockholm Syndrome is a myth, but that's a story for another video. Otherwise, people are saying they don't believe him, and will continue to spread the story, that it's okay, that they don't need to lie anymore, and of course, a lot of misgendering, and the reason the story worries me so much, the twisting of an accusation, just under its denial by its alleged victim, to paint all trans people as creeps and inherently criminal. Now, that being said, even in public channels, which these discords apparently were, it is kind of weird to be talking to minors. It's not illegal, but it is weird. Influencers, whether they recognize it or not, are in a position of power over their fans. When these fans are children, I do think they have a responsibility to just kind of leave them the hell alone. Keep it professional. A lot of adults have the problem making the distinction between parasocial and actually social friendships, never mind people that are still learning to socialize. And while the victim in this scenario made it clear he wasn't groomed, making the kind of jokes Ava was making at the time, in an environment where she knew children were present, is just shitty behaviour, if nothing else. It is, no matter how you slice it, a bit creepy. Does that make it grooming? No, because words mean things.
Hang on. Are we downplaying already?
Between parasocial and actually social friendships, never mind people that are still learning to socialize. And while the victim in this scenario made it clear he wasn't groomed, making the kind of jokes Ava was making at the time, in an environment where she knew children were present, is just shitty behaviour, if nothing else. It is, no matter how you slice it, a bit creepy. Does that make it grooming? No, because...
Yes, we're downplaying. Okay, great. This was released 10 hours ago. It's currently 3:15. this person is in Britain, let's say, because she sounds British. I'm also in Britain. The 29th of July, a lot more has come out since then, and we're downplaying it, saying it's a bit creepy. Is it grooming?
Words mean things, but it does make it creepy, and it should be condemned. Ava has since apologised for making these jokes.
This is so cowardly. This is the most cowardly shit, man.
But not specifically for making them around minors, which, like, the jokes are problematic enough on their own to warrant an apology, but put them in the context of being around minors and, yeah, it's weird fucking behaviour. Now, just because I believe the victim in this scenario, and don't think this admittedly weird behaviour is quite what the far right were making it out to be, even though it is creepy and already had me looking sideways, well, that doesn't mean I don't find the other allegations bad. I just want people to be clear that we take allegations seriously. We don't jump to conclusions.
She's not taking this seriously. Like, fuck off. If you're taking it seriously, why are you just taking what the victim said and running with it? When, if you had any knowledge of this kind of thing whatsoever, you'd know why you can't do that. Because of how much they've probably been manipulated, because of the power dynamic, and because of the age difference. Like, Jesus Christ, this is extremely irresponsible. There we go, I found it.
We listen to victims and let them determine the narrative. That is not what's happening.
No, you don't do that. No. Oh, fuck's sake. I'm going to have to stop watching this because I'm just going to get too angry. That you don't do that. Maybe occasionally, maybe depending on what the actual thing was. In terms of grooming, you just don't do that. It's bizarre. I'm listening to a trans person who doesn't understand grooming. Like, you think that'd be like our expertise because of how often we get fucking called groomers. But no, this person knows fuck all. But wants to talk about it anyway, because you can get clout from defending Kris Tyson whilst pretending to be against them. Great. I love being trans. I love all my fellow trans influencers.
In regard to the other stuff, I'll address them in order of when they were revealed, which will, unfortunately for the tone of this, mean that these claims will become more problematic as the video goes on. So please don't take this as a defense of someone who's allegedly done some very bad things.
We're over 10 minutes in, and it just feels like a defense so far, but okay.
I want to take these one claim at a time. So first, the shadman stuff. So, for those of you who don't know, one of the legitimate claims I've seen against Ava Tyson is that she actively supported and was friends with the artist Shadman.
By the way, these supposed far-right people who have been the ones initially complaining about Kris Tyson, this is what most of them have been talking about, and this has got nothing to do with victims when she talks about centering victims. Like, what victims? Like, we're talking about, like, are we talking about, like, Keemstar's child? Like, what are we talking about?
Notorious online figure who used to be known for drawing illicit material, and on occasion, goblins, which is what I'll be calling CP from here on out. In addition, he once made this kind of art of Yushida Keemstar's daughter. This is absolutely indefensible. This guy was a monster, and they were supported by Ava several years ago. The most recent evidence I could find of them interacting with this guy was in 2019, so still years ago, but it's not like they shouldn't have known better. She has apologised for this profusely in the years since, but if I were a victim of this goblin artist, I don't know if I'd be able to forgive her for that, especially with the context we now have of her regularly interacting with minors, even if it was in public forums. It is indefensible. But importantly, this isn't the accusation people were leading with, because it would implicate—
Wait, they weren't leading with this? I thought this was what people were talking about with Kris Tyson for ages before the rest of the stuff. I don't know, I'll see a source on this, I guess, but this feels very dishonest. Like, after all that prefacing, which completely turned me off and made me not want to watch the video, they finally said something that I can actually stand behind, and have almost immediately fucked it up, so that's great.
It's a whole bunch of other people that have and still do interact with this guy, that the people trying to take down Ava still support. Does that absolve her of this?
Oh, not anymore. Trust me.
Absolutely not. Personally, that crosses a line for me. I would need to see her making a real effort to make amends for this to even begin to put this behind her. And honestly, I don't know enough to know what that would—
Yeah, Elvis the Alien, he's like sunk right now. Like, he's deleted his Twitter. Like, who else knows what's going on? Who knows what else is going on, should I say?
Even look like. And with the accusations that follow this
He's been pilloried over this now.
stuff, the stuff that came out in the following days that's even worse, and with her failing to address this in her recent statements, it all comes together to paint quite a dark picture. However, unlike other creators, Ava has apologised and distanced herself from Shadman, whereas people like Belle Delphine, Shoe on Head, Count Dankula, Notch, The Amazing Atheist, Ricky Berwick, Sky Williams, Chris Raygun, Rhett and Link, Ego Raptor, and a whole bunch of other edgy YouTube and Twitch stars either still interact with this guy or have never apologised for associating with him. At the time, he was one of the biggest artists on the internet, which is fucked.
Whether they have or not, a lot of them have now received some kind of consequences for it. I don't know if we're going to get to any of that point. Like, there's a really weird way of putting it, because the amount you must be so worried that, like, people will just watch some of the video and then come to a conclusion, which is probably what it sounds like I've done. But, like, how are you not supposed to with some of the shit you're saying? You know what I mean?
Why were so many people okay with this? That's awful. People I followed before still follow him, have commissioned art by him, and have been friends with him too. Jessica Negri collaborated with him. Plague of Gripes follows him. The guys that make Smiling Friends live with him, are friends with him, and interviewed him. The Game Grumps were friends with him. This doesn't make it right, but it makes her just as complicit as tons of other influencers.
Just as complicit? Didn't she have like a picture like on her wall? It was still there when like Mr. Beast did a video there. Like, I don't know if it's just as complicit, and I don't know if all of them had the same kind of relationship. This feels like, I don't know. We complained about people making a conclusion then finding evidence for it, but it feels like she's done similar, because there's not much. Like, we don't know really which of these people have had deeper relationships with this person, which of them also hung things on the wall, like begged Shadman to make like porn and shit. Like, I don't know.
Does this suck? Absolutely. But people making this into an attack on the entire trans community, as if one of us being awful should torpedo any fight for trans rights? That's ludicrous.
Well, the problem is lots of us are awful. That's not the only awful thing you can do. But beyond that, a lot of non-trans people have started to have their feet held to the fire for this kind of shit, you know?
It's bigger than us. If anything, having one trans person be among the dozens of cis people who also propped up this monster means we're just as normal, just as fucked up a group as anyone else. Some trans people are...
Nuxtaku, he's very much having his feet held to the fire as well. Like, this whole thread happened. It kind of seems like it's not just trans people getting attacked. It kind of seems like people were complaining about Tyson being friends with Shadman for a long time, and then other stuff came out, and now that's become relevant because it turns out they were also like trying to groom kids on the internet. Like, lolly porn, grooming kids on the internet, that's a pretty dodgy combo, you know what I'm saying? But hey, anything to make it sound like trans people are the victims, I guess.
Monsters. Some cis people are monsters. That does not mean that trans people are undeserving of your sympathy and your solidarity. On top of this context,
I don't think anyone's saying that. I don't know. If we showed like some examples of what kind of shit she's talking about, that'd be nice, but evidence isn't a huge thing for this person, I don't think. There's a lot of just throwing out crazy claims, and we need less of that, quite frankly.
This is stuff from years ago, and apparently it was the edgy thing to do in her circles to joke around with that stuff. But it's still gross, and yeah, I've made my opinions on this sort of thing clear before with my last relapse into commenting on creator drama, something I promised I'd never do again. Here we are. The thing is, stories like these being spread uncritically...
What is it with these trans people, by the way? They're always, whenever they talk about drama, they act like they're being so dirty and like it's the worst thing ever, but they can't fucking help themselves. And they pretty much treat things like trans issues as like drama issues anyway. Like, this person, when they talk about like trans stuff, it's weird. They have a more upbeat like energy and like more like weird, bizarre jokes and stuff, and like just the most insane claims that it's like, I can't tell if they're serious or not, but I feel like I need to be able to try and take them seriously for the points they're making to have any impact, and I just can't.
Are very dangerous for the trans community. So it is important we get our stories straight, which is why I'm doing this at all. Don't spread far-right lies, and be clear which, if any, allegations are something we need to address, and which are part of the ongoing smear campaign against any and all trans people by the far right. For what it's worth, Ava has gone on record apologising for her interactions with the goblin people, and the person who famously made those goblins. You can accept that or you can't. It's not to me to do that for you, nor should it be. I would be wary of her for that alone. And I'll put this into context. I'm wary of the whole crop of creators that did exactly the same thing, not just her, of which there were a lot. Treating this goblin man as a lolcow and interacting with him as some sort of edgy joke? Personally, I find that shit pretty much indefensible. But the same people who are bringing this up to attack Ava don't have the same heat for others who acted the same way. They are operating on a double standard here. By all means, let's condemn everyone who participated in this. But they don't care.
Is it a double standard? Doesn't it depend on each individual's like relationship with this Shadman person? Some of them might have tweeted at him a handful of times. Others might have been like very close friends with him. So it's kind of difficult. And Kris Tyson's problem is she also had accusations of other stuff that's, you know, in the same vein as looking at Lolly around the same time that people were turning the heat up on this like Shadman shit more. We had Lolly controversies from people like Vorsh not that long ago. You know, I'd be surprised if this person isn't familiar with who Vorsh is, so, you know, with all the far right being thrown out every 2 seconds. So, I don't know. I don't think it's a double standard, personally.
Because they don't care about justice for victims, or for putting a stop to goblins, which is right.
And we're just throwing loads of, justifications of how people think, because they don't care about that. That's what it is. You're reaching into people's heads. You don't know what these people care about, and you don't want them to care about things that you think are important, so you use the victims to make them look bad. Like, I don't know, what you're doing is no better in a lot of ways, if that's what they are doing. Because you seem to be using the victim as a shield for all trans people when you're saying, no, we should be centering this person, not the trans person, when the victim was groomed. Like, if you're being groomed, your testimony is not necessarily going to be very accurate to the truth of the matter, to reality. And that's not to say anything bad of the victim. That's no disrespect to them. That's just how it works. And this person does not understand grooming. So that's great. At least she probably isn't a groomer. To me, she kind of is a groomer, just not a sexual groomer. She's grooming people to think insane things. Because I've watched more than one of her videos. It's like, it's pure propaganda. Like that's all I can say about this person. This is just essence of thought, but not quite as annoying. Well, more annoying in some ways, but, you know, at least you don't have to look at essence of thought the whole time, or listen to Methel Thurston, she has his A. You know, you've at least got that going for you, so congrats.
No, they have a particular target in mind, and outside of her, they have no issue with this. Just today, at the time of writing, she made a post apologizing for her bad behavior and bad edgy jokes. I have to accept this apology. I don't think I could. And with the accusations that followed, I really, really can't. But the responses to this apology post should make it clear that many of the people attacking her are not doing it out of genuine concern for people hurt by her interacting with Shadman. But
how to tweeting in response to this shitty apology? Okay, she said she didn't she wouldn't necessarily accept it. Let's just get that clearly, because I'm not about misrepresenting people.
I have to accept this apology. I don't think I could.
Yeah, there we go. So she didn't actually accept this apology. Although did kind of, she apologized for all this. I don't know. You can see why. I'm primed, you know, because I know this person's a fucking liar, so I'm primed for everything. To be honest, I never thought it was true, similar to the Sniper Wolf apology. I was in like the stuff Chris was saying in the apology, or...
And with the accusations that followed, I really, really can't. But the responses to this apology post should make it clear that many of the people attacking her are not doing it out of genuine concern for people hurt by her interacting with Shadman, but out of malice towards her for being trans.
Yeah, like, how can you say that? I mean, we're going to see what they are, but I'm going to guess it's everyone that even calls them like a he, which is just what some people call trans people. I'm sorry about it.
And if you have fucking Keemstar of all people, the person with the most righteous case against Shadman given he drew his own fucking daughter, even despite him being a notorious arsehole and drama hound, he's dismissing the allegations about the grooming? Yeah, this isn't what these people trying to build their drama channels out of shock allegations are making out like it is. And by that, I mean it isn't proof the trans community are the groomers the far right says we are.
Is that... Am I supposed to see this and think, oh, this person just wants to hate on trans people?
It's proof that just like every community on this planet, some of us are pieces of shit.
Is this? I mean, this is just a much more cynical way of looking at it, but how cynical was this person's way of looking at, like, the puberty blocker ban, for example? Like, people just pick and choose what to see cynically and what to actually look at face value and think, yeah, maybe this person is being genuine. People just pick and choose which ones to give that kind of charity to. And it's the same with this person.
It would honestly be weirder if one of us wasn't caught doing shit.
You just expose the entire thing. Mr. Beast can fire you, but we know... Also turns out your child agent was Jewish. Look, they're still... This is weird. Like, I don't know what the fuck they're saying there. But, like, how does this back up what she was saying? Like, this is just victim shit again.
Like this, given how many members of every other community were. So, I'm not defending the goblin stuff at all. Exactly the opposite. That sucks, and I hate it. What I want to do here, however, is urge people not...
This one's going a bit further, but hey, we should be trying a bit harder to stop people thinking this about us at the same time. Like, too many of us do live out our fucking sexual deviancies fucking live on fucking Twitter and shit like that.
Not to jump on right-wing smear campaigns, even if there are valid accusations hidden in there. The big thing being shared around was this story that was immediately dismissed in its strongest terms by the alleged victim. We can't bring justice to victims when we dismiss their words and intentions. The goblins...
That's really stupid, especially in this case. This person does not understand grooming.
That's fair game. Fuck that. But be wary, because this isn't the last time you're going to see false allegations against a trans person in the public eye, and we need to be critical, victim-centered, and with an eye towards justice. Because we shouldn't...
Why? Why is that important? Like, oh my god, this person doesn't have a fucking clue. It's so frustrating listening to this person occasionally look like they're teeing up to actually hit the ball and then fucking slinging it in the fucking fences again. Like, time after time. Like, just hit it. It's right there. There's a reason why we don't center the victim every single time anything happens whatsoever. Like, Jesus Christ. If the world was this simple... I don't even know. I can't imagine the world being that simple because I'm not simple-minded enough, so I don't know.
Stand with people who are out for dunking on trans people for views and clout. We should instead be standing with victims. And in this case, the alleged victim told us what he wants people to do. He wants them to condemn these stories as false and argue against them whenever they turn up. The other...
I don't know. I feel bad for even giving credit whenever this person says something like that they condemn something, because they'll go out of their way to divert onto all kinds of other stuff that don't fucking matter, make complete bogus claims about why we should center the victim. It's bizarre. It's utterly bizarre. Somehow, not only are we bad at convincing people we're not groomers when some of us are, but we're also bad at talking about grooming and like condemning grooming because we don't even understand what it is and how it works. Like, Jesus Christ, take like a psychology course or something, please, I beg you. It can't be that much. It can't cost that much. You don't know what you're talking about.
The victims, that's a different story. But yeah, fuck goblins. That's a whole separate issue. We can and should condemn that in the strongest terms. But none of that should have any bearing on the weaponization of false allegations against her, especially when these allegations are being used to portray all trans people as abusers, or, in the case of the original video that was going around, to portray...
Are there that many people portraying all trans people as abusers? Like, if we look through a bunch of like commentary community, for example, videos, which these people tend to have a huge like chip on their shoulder about, like, are we really going to watch them and say, yeah, these people want to paint all trans people as abusers? Like, this is like victim mentality on steroids.
Portray trans people as just transitioning to get away with abuse, which is, there are no words. It's just ridiculous, hateful nonsense. But if you find yourself agreeing with gays against groomers...
She's more angry about the transphobia than about any of the fucking grooming shit. Like, fuck me.
Nico and Andrew Tate, and standing with them against the victim these people are supposedly defending, you should be questioning whose narrative you bought into here. In fact, unsurprisingly...
Yeah, buy into the correct narrative. How about just don't buy into a fucking narrative and stop pushing a narrative? Think for yourself. Or don't, if you come to the conclusion that we need to center the victim in a fucking child grooming case. Maybe don't. Maybe don't think for yourself. Maybe do less thinking. Maybe find something else to do than fucking proselytizing at people, because you're lying. I just not hear GAG, as in gays against groomers, being compared to Sneeko. Let me just hear that again. I wasn't really listening, to be honest. Listening to this is difficult because I have a bit of a... When I hear bullshit, I'm just like, fuck this, you know? I've watched this person before and they are like... I don't know if you know who Essence of Thought is, but that's the level we're talking about in terms of like propagandizing, you know? Like 16 children died following... you know, in the 3 years following the puberty blockers ban. So it's a huge scandal that everyone's covering up, and it's the Tavistock 16, and the government has literally murdered trans kids. It's that kind of thing. So, yeah, I don't know.
To portray trans people as just transitioning to get away with abuse, which is... There are no words. It's just ridiculous, hateful nonsense. But if you find yourself agreeing with gays against groomers, Sneeko and Andrew Tate, and standing with them against the victim these people are supposedly defending...
I mean, they were listing them. I don't know if they were comparing them. But I mean, yeah, this person is going to hate gays against groomers, like, just how it is. I don't know why they'd be compared. I'm not too familiar with gays against groomers. I can't remember which one. There was at least one of those groups that was, like, screaming at me on Twitter for a while, but it might have been someone else, to be fair.
You should be questioning whose narrative you bought into here. In fact, unsurprisingly, if you look this stuff up, one of the first things you'll see is a thread on Kiwi Farms, the notorious harassment website, digging up dirt on Ava for the purpose of harassment, all because she's trans. And there's a reason the goblin stuff does...
Are we gonna substantiate that? Are we gonna show anything showing that they're going after her because she's trans? Even though the shadman stuff has been known for ages and has been like hinted at for ages by plenty of people and has now become brought into focus again because it turns out they were talking to kids online and potentially sexually abused someone, I think it was.
Doesn't come up very often, because the guy she was interacting with there was close with so many other content creators, and huge content creators. He was popular, and so many influencers were complicit in spreading his goblin shit. The people making these accusations aren't interested in taking down this purveyor of goblins. They should be, but they're not. Instead, they're interested in attacking one person in particular.
How are we justifying that, bearing in mind how many people have been going after, like, Ricky Barrick and, like, Elvis the Alien who deleted his Twitter, I think. Like, come on. Are we gonna... This is the problem. They seem to be doing it like chronologically, but I don't know if they literally made the video in that order, which would seem a bit insane. But hey, oh, by the way, big old Patreon list. This person gets paid a fair amount by, I don't know if these are people with money. Maybe they are. But they're getting paid a fair amount to spread these utter lies on the internet. So that's nice. Trans rights. It's all for trans rights. What we need to do for trans rights is lie to each other as much as humanly possible. Thanks, brigitte Empire. You've taught me a lot today.
and ignoring all the other people who were involved and have not yet apologized. Yes, her apologizing will not be enough for most people.
It's just lies. This is just lies. Like, where do you have to, like, what kind of blinkers do you have to have on to, like, believe this shit and to say it on a video like this that's gonna get thousands of views? Oh my god.
I get it, and it shouldn't be. It is more than a lot of other people who did similar things around this couple man did, and yet that doesn't make it right. I still can't look past that, to be honest. It still sucks. I still hate it. I just want us to be very clear why this is happening, and the motivations of those spreading these narratives. It doesn't make it right, but it puts things more into context.
Yeah, in your brain, maybe. It puts things into context for what the trans community wants to hear, because the trans community want other people to blame, then maybe they just don't look very good, and transitioning was probably a mistake, and it's not fixed all their issues, and it hasn't made them happy, and we've been teaching people that that's what happens on fucking TikTok and shit like that. So yeah.
And this is important because this can and will be used by transphobic and fascist trolls to smear all trans people as predators. They want to paint one of us with this brush so they can paint all of us with it. This is how they view minority groups, as inherently malicious. And they're constantly looking for justifications for that narrative they've already built to justify their disgust at
We're like talking about fascists now. What about the fucking paedophile that happens to be a trans person? Why don't we shit a bit more on her? How much time have we spent actually saying about Kris Tyson? Why it was bad? Shit like that. You know what, this is just proselytizing. I'm going to skip because this bit looks more substantive. And she said there's like more problematic stuff. But like, there's no point in me listening to her acknowledge that the shit that Kris Tyson was doing was like problematic when we're going to then run so much defense and spend so much time pivoting onto other shit, you know?
Jeanette McCurdy, a former child star recently back in the zeitgeist as the author of I'm Glad My Mum Died. This is horrible. This is a violation and something I haven't seen her apologize for. Even if she did, this is over the line. There's not much more to say on this other than its horrific behaviour. For those of you who don't know what revenge is, this refers to the releasing of intimate photos.
Like, doesn't it feel so cowardly? We're 20 minutes into an almost half an hour video, and it's taking this long to start saying, yeah, this is pretty fucked up, when we've spent so much time running defense and so much time throwing the spotlight onto other people, calling fucking Kyle Rittenhouse a murderer for like zero reason. Like, what the fuck? This person is deranged. This is unbelievable. The fact that this many people, like 9.23k subscribers, like, you're just brain fucking people. You're like grooming people in a different way. Like, I think this person is almost as disgusting as Kris Tyson. This is like essence of thought level shit, except maybe without the cyberbullying. I'm not sure if she's like gone into any of that shit yet. It wouldn't surprise me, but I don't know for sure.
Photos and video that were sent by a partner as part of some kind of relationship, or possibly stolen from them or someone else, which are proliferated and shared around as a way of shaming and degrading the person depicted in this material, usually in revenge for breaking up with the partner these were sent to, or for similarly petty and vindictive reasons.
This is just like YouTube's response to the Sniper Wolf situation. They called her out for doxing, but acted like the victim Jack's Films did something worth doxing. Yeah, I know a bit of that situation. Like, I know Jack's Films was like pretty obsessive over her for a while, but Sniper Wolf's an interesting person, shall we say. Because she, I know she showed up at his house and stuff, and that was fucked. I've no idea why you'd ever want to do that. I guess a big part of her not being banned was that she didn't do it on YouTube, it was on like a different platform or something? I can't remember. But yeah, it's annoying when people run so much cover and then are like, oh yeah, by the way, I think it's bad. Like, do you? You're not acting like you do. You're acting like you think an awful lot of stuff is bad and you'd rather talk about that. So why are you even talking about fucking Kris Tyson? Why not just make a video about why you think Kyle Rittenhouse is a murderer?
This is non-consensual exploitation, and an exercise in misogynistic public humiliation. I have nothing else to say on this except for that this is a red line. There is no excuse for this. The sharing of revenge is an act of misogynistic violence. It may have begun for obvious reasons, but
I don't need to hear a fucking virtue signal about this shit. Like, you've already run cover for all of it over and over on your video, and now you're gonna act like this? Like, fuck off.
The scrutiny Ava was now Twitter user she accused Ava Kris Tyson of SA. In the thread, she thoroughly details an abusive relationship in which Ava went from promising her a part in a Mr. Beast video to coercing her into acts I can't talk about on YouTube without this video being taken down, and much more. I'll link to the thread in the description of this video. You'll be seeing screenshots from it now, but I recommend you read the entire thread for yourself. It's both extensive and extremely damning. Beyond the essay, the thread details an ongoing abuse of power on Ava's part, getting this person a job, firing her when it became clear that she didn't want a sexual relationship anymore, and lying to HR to make it look like she resigned, when it was clear in messages that she was being replaced for not putting out anymore. There is some stuff in this thread that is genuinely hard to read and very disturbing, and unfortunately, it puts all of the earlier accusations into context. Honestly, it had me questioning whether I was wrong for initially questioning the allegations at all. I wish wrote a version of this video where I was purely
questioning the allegation, which of course you did because this person's trans. You have to understand your own bias as well as everyone else's. Like, Jesus Christ. It's like everyone that has bias doesn't understand that they have bias in the same way everyone else does. And so it just sounds like projection whenever they talk about other people with bias. It's really strange. Like, surely you have to acknowledge that you do the same shit when you complain about other people, because so much of this stuff, like, so many of the things she said could easily be projection, especially whenever she talks about like dishonesty or propaganda or talking points or anything like that. She's like super guilty of all that shit, so.
talking about centering victims, and with that lens, represent the allegations as a split story, with a set of false allegations on one side to create an anti-trans panic, and a genuine scandal centering around Shadman and the community of influencers who are associated with CP artist. But the more I wrote, and the more I sat on it, the less comfortable I was with that. Yes, the Shadman stuff was bad, but the stuff Ava phrased in her apology as edgy jokes was, the more I looked at it and the more I researched it, beyond edgy jokes.
So she was initially going to be like, hang on.
Anti-trans panic, and a genuine scandal centering around lens represent the allegations as a split story, with a set of false allegations on one side to create an anti-trans panic, and a genuine scandal centering around Shadman and the community of influencers who are associated with CP artist. But the more I wrote, and the more I sat on it, the less comfortable I was with that. Yes.
Yeah, so she finally understood that her first instincts were actually bad. You'd think there'd be a bit more like of a connecting of dots. Like, oh, my instincts aren't great around these kind of things. Maybe I need to update the way I think about them. But no, like, this video is clear evidence against any of that process going on, so.
Yes, the Shadman stuff was bad, but the stuff Ava phrased in her apology as edgy jokes was, the more I looked at it and the more I researched it, beyond edgy jokes. Because of this context, even this not being in a one-on-one settings, minors were in that Discord, and that changes things. Yes, this does not technically break any rules, but I couldn't in good faith try and present this narrative as complicated. Whether it's illegal or not.
Yes, minors were in the Discord and the Shadman thing was going on, so people started adding the things together and realizing there's a pattern. Why does that have to have anything to do with her being trans? The amount of videos I've seen from the kind of people that this person would call far right, that are clearly not having a go at Kris Tyson for being trans, although might have an issue with trans people running defense for her, like this. By constantly going on about other stuff, they're finally actually acknowledging some shit, which very well done. It's a shame you fucked it up with the fucking first 10 minutes and then plenty of other bits in between. Like, fuck me. Like, Jesus Christ, I need to just get a bunch of phrases from these videos, and anytime I hear other trans people say them, like, yeah, this person is not worth listening to on anything, because this is like the cult brain in action. Like, Jesus fuck. This is the most cowardly, like, disavowal of someone, but still technically disavowing that person that I've ever seen. This is crazy to me.
Her behaviour was gross. And with the Shadman stuff on top of that, I found myself feeling genuinely dirty having read all of this stuff. Like, I needed to wash myself clean.
I think lying to people on the internet over and over is gross, personally. So this person probably shouldn't be complaining about other people being gross, in my opinion.
For just seeing the evidence. And then the revenge stuff came out, and I scrapped this altogether. But after reading this thread, after reading the most serious allegations to date, I had to come back to this. Because the message was still important. It is imperative that we center victims, believe victims, and distinguish between far-right smears and genuine allegations of poor behaviour and worse.
Well, the problem is, none of you can distinguish that. And the other problem is, plenty of you are happy to define anything you don't like as far-right smearers. And that includes you too. So how am I supposed to trust anything this person says? How am I supposed to trust anything the trans community says about this kind of shit? Like, someone gets found out to be a groomer. Why should we be going like, oh, that might be a far-right smear, be careful? Like, no. Don't run defense for this person. Just say it's bad. Just say it's bad. Easy. Easy. Kris Tyson is disgusting. That's all I've ever had to say about this. Fuck Kris Tyson.
Making weird jokes around minors was gross, but the
Making weird jokes about minors is gross, but
fact that it was spun into something it wasn't to fit a far-right narrative took away from her actual misdeeds.
Is that a fact? The thing that I'm seeing trying to take away from her misdeeds is trans people having absolutely nothing to say about what she's done, but somehow having a lot of opinions on how people are misgendering her. And that's apparently what's worth talking about. Why is that not worth talking about from Brigitte Empire, who is a trans person? Why can't we see that problem? We always got to blame everything on the fucking far right.
Something that began to look like more and more of a pattern, with first the Shadman stuff and then the revenge. With the latest allegations, it's clearer than ever that one of the biggest injustices of this story is the very way it was initially framed. Because this started as a clout-chasing anti-trans crusade by drama YouTubers and Kiwi farms.
What? She doesn't substantiate a fucking thing she says. Like, I've more or less watched this whole video, which is more I've done before, because every time I watch this person's videos, I rage quit after, like, no time at all. She doesn't substantiate the shit she says. She says about centering victims when one of these cases is about someone who is groomed. You don't do that with grooming cases. I've explained why fucking a million times, because it drives me insane every time she says it. Like, this is batshit insane. Like, what the fuck is she doing?
The framing of the allegations just didn't stand up to scrutiny. But looking at the evidence without the framing, especially with the most recent allegations, free of the context of a grooming smear...
Yeah, that's what most of the commentary channels you're shitting on were doing as well, by the way. It's interesting. It's interesting. Like, I'm seeing a similar thing to when Demon Mama finally denounced Kaffles. And what Demon Mama did was she didn't denounce Kaffles when that Mutahar video came out. She definitely didn't denounce Kaffles like a year and a half before that, when Destiny showed off much of the same stuff just without the newer things. The fact that Kaffles had taken a huge amount of money erroneously against the spirit of like crowdfunding with no clear direction on what it's for, and no one seems to give a shit because they're too fucking cult brained to care that they threw their money in the toilet, I guess. And she would only disavow it because someone else, like sanitized enough for Demon Mama, also did a fucking expose. So then she could disavow Kaffles while also sort of quietly shitting on the commentary community. She'd see the donation fucking Mutahar made to make sure it was still working and to report back. And she looks at it and she's like, that's weird. Like, even that, it's like so obvious what she's doing. It feels like a similar thing here. Like, they don't like the people that first came out with it, even though the people that came out with it were correct, and what was going on even initially was dodgy, despite the fact that Lava came out initially saying that it was not bad. Who changed their story pretty quickly when they saw more evidence. Like, fucking hell. I'm watching the like count go up on this video, and it's actually, like, starting to depress the fuck out of me. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, makes it clear that this is a story of abuse. Abuse of power, SA, and the person acting with impunity by using their position of power as an influencer to get away with reprehensible acts. And when you put it like that, it's clear, isn't it, that this has nothing to do with her being trans.
And by the way, have we ever spoken about Kaffles? I wonder if we've ever spoken about Kaffles on here. Oh, she doesn't like Vorsh, okay. I wonder if, oh, do you think this was about the lolly thing and Kaffles sticking up for him? I like the tongue-in-cheek thing. Basically, like, the way it comes across, I'm not sure if I'm meant to take her seriously or not whenever I watch her, and, I don't know. It's a really weird feeling when it's about stuff that's supposed to be, like, serious. I don't know. Yeah, probably running defense for Kaffles, who is also a terrible person. But then I think Brigitte Empire is a terrible person because she's a fucking massive liar and has got this situation completely wrong. And I just get to sit here and watch as this like counter slowly goes up because idiots listen to this, and because she sounds vaguely authoritative and speaks well, that's all they need to hear. She's confirming their worldview. So that's great. I love it. I love trans fucking communities on the internet. We're getting stupider and stupider. And people like Brigitte Empire are why. She's not the only one, but she's one of them.
Like many people in the public eye before her, the story of the allegations against Ava Tyson is a story of a celebrity abusing their power and using it to indulge in some of their worst.
Yes, so you fucking spent all this time focusing on other things, talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, talking about far-right smears, when at the end of the day, a trans person in a position of power abused said power. And this seems to happen fairly regularly in trans circles. And we seem okay with it, mostly because these people are also abusing their power. And if we go too hard against it, people might realize, oh shit, Brigitte Empire's videos are full of completely unsubstantiated claims. Interesting. Should we really be supporting this person? Who's perfectly happy to call other people disgusting and call people murderers and call people far right, but is a fucking propagandist hack fuck? Like, I don't understand. I don't understand trans people on the internet at all. I don't know why we watch this shit. I don't know why I'm watching this shit. Oh wait, I do, because someone needs to call this shit out and no one else is going to, so I'm doing it.
Instincts. The reason the original far-right narrative did not accurately tell this story is because it doesn't fit their narrative.
She won't even, like, go into detail on what the far-right narrative was, by the way. Like, have we heard it? I don't think I have. Like, if I'm wrong, if someone finds this fucking video or whatever and points out the bit that I skipped past because I was getting bored of being explained what very obvious concepts were, like, Fair enough, but I didn't hear it anywhere. It's just far-right narrative, far-right narrative. What's the far-right narrative? It's a narrative that's far-right. It's anti-trans. Trans people bad. There's nothing more to it than that, you know? This person literally thinks trans people are stupid. I'm convinced.
As Moonskinner says in her thread, both her and Ava met as adults. This is not the story about grooming. And this is not a
No, but part of it... Oh my God.
story about the dangers of trans people. This is a story about abuse and the potential danger of influencers who, through their relationship with their fans, especially in the age of creators directly interacting with their fans on a regular basis with no go-betweens and no boundaries, have a uniquely smooth path from being a...
I can't listen to this person anymore. I think Brigitte Empire is a propagandist piece of shit. I don't see how she's that much better than someone like Kris Tyson. She hasn't groomed any kids. She hasn't sexually assaulted anyone that we know of. At the same time, all she does is fucking lie to everyone. Fuck Kris Tyson and fuck Brigitte Empire and every other fucking trans influencer that goes out there bullshitting and trying to cover for people like Kris Tyson who don't need covering for. When you're looking at the shit that Kris Tyson did, you don't need to constantly go on about other things. You don't need to come up with like far-right conspiracies in order to distract from the fact that this is yet another trans person doing some weird shit out there, you know? There's not enough of them, so here's another one. It's Ava Kris Tyson. Well, hey, there's plenty of trans people out there grooming other trans people into being more stupid and to being more radical about stuff that being overly radicalized about is not helping. See the last fucking 5 years for evidence of that. But yeah, Brigitte Empire, terrible, cowardly disavowal of Kris Tyson, technically a disavowal. That's about the nicest thing I'll ever say about Brigitte Empire, because fuck this person.